Hello everyone. You are in the AutoCraft shop and today we will be repairing a battered Audi A6 after a fight with a regular bus. The car had an accident with public transport hitting the bus with the right side. In the collision, the front right wheel was torn off and it was the wheel that received rather severe damage to the Audi body. The bottom of the A-pillar was crumpled and the threshold was damaged. All this part went deep into the car and the pillar went up. The front fender was also damaged. The hood is crumpled, the headlight is broken and the bumper is cracked. Immediately Audi caught up with another car from behind, crushing the rear bumper and fender into the trunk area. In addition, the taillight also split. This will be a very budget repair as the owner provided a minimum set of spare parts for repairs. There is a donor, the cheapest Chinese front fender, a front bumper in very poor condition, a headlight and a taillight. Let's try to assemble a car from these parts.
Spending time in the subway, riding in circles, thinking in circles.
We put the car on the slipway. We removed the dashboard and disassembled the interior. We see large folds on the floor and a very serious deformation of the threshold in the middle of the doorway. We cut a small hole under the counter in the floor with a hook, pull this corner of the threshold and the counter out. Now it will turn out to stick the chain into the hole and, grabbing it and try to straighten the body properly. I am repositioning the power tower on the slipway and will pull the damaged part forward at about a 45-degree angle. Since the car is strong enough, the threshold had to be cut from the inside and outside. The machine is strong, though more than 20 years have passed since its release. Having opened the operating window in the threshold, I cut the reinforcement near the crease with a chisel to make it easier to straighten the damaged area. I straighten the folds and check with the factory dimensions. We bring the body into the correct position. Let's start working with a donor. Donor is in very good condition. Of course it is a little larger than we need, but this makes it possible to cut out exactly the part that is needed. Mark up and start cutting.
Thinking in circles. Riding in circles. Riding in circles.
It is inconvenient to work with a large donor. We cut out a slightly larger piece and after that we open the threshold and cut off everything superfluous. We open the threshold cavity and now you can see how well the car is mothballed. Approximately a layer of 3 to 4 mm throughout the entire volume of the threshold is shed with a preservative, something based on paraffin. It is in a solid state but can be easily removed with a chisel. I will try not to remove all the preservative but only in those places where I will weld. When cutting out the reinforcement, I tried to make sure that the future seams were not on the same line but went in steps. The inner seam of the threshold and the outer one are located at a distance of approximately 30 centimeters from each other. We cut off the excess part of the floor that is located on the body in front where the jack is placed. You can clearly see how thick the metal is layered there. A fairly thick cutlet is obtained. 3 layers of 2 mm metals fit together with some gaps. In the early 2000s, metal was clearly not spared in the production of cars. Prepared the donor and proceed to work with the body. We mark the places of future welding and cut out the damaged part. Having gained access to the damaged inner part of the body, we hold out and straighten. This is how the threshold prepared for welding looks like. A lining is welded on the outer seam. At the welding site, I removed the sealant and removed the paraffin preservative from the internal cavity. Since there are only 2 metals on the rack, I decided to make a seam obliquely at an angle of 45 degrees. We put the donor in place, check the body dimensions and start the first assembly. I am installing the fender, and now it has become clear that without making the front part we will not be able to weld the donor. It is necessary to lift the front part of the wing shelf and straighten it. We install the fender and put the hood so that it closes. We check the gaps. From the gaps it became clear that the windshield pillar is 4 mm higher than it should be. This can be seen from the gap between the door frame and the pillar. Again, remove the fender and door. In order not to crush the pillar, I wrap it with a former seatbelt and pull the pillar through a special block. I pull down, and at the same time it is necessary to prop up the B-pillar because I do not have to lower the entire right side of the car down. Having fixed the entire car in one position, we lower only the windshield pillar. Pulling it down and exposing the body as we need to start welding. We completely weld the seam from the side of the wheel. We also completely weld the seam in the front pillar from the passenger compartment.
About a couple of months out of a year or something like that. By the time I wanted to learn to go to school, boy, you can't go to school. They went to school in them days in them churches, you know what I mean? You can't go to school, boy, you got to try.
In the middle of the doorway on the inside, we still have an operating window open. It is necessary in order to be able to weld the reinforcement. First we weld the first amplifier, which has a shape almost like at the threshold. It is semicircular. We install a wide patch on the seam and weld. After that, we weld the vertical reinforcement. Having finished from the inside, we proceed to welding the threshold from the outside. Finished with welding, again start assembly. I had to restore the amplifier from a broken stock bumper since the donor bumper was without an amplifier at all. I also had to straighten the brackets, bend the hood and use a bad old bumper to make the correct gaps on the face. The front end was made as a gift as we needed it more than the owner. all due to the fact that even gaps on the right side could not be done without making gaps on the muzzle. After making sure that everything worked out as it should, we again removed the door and fender, grind the welds and applied protective primers. First we apply an wash primer to all exposed metal and then an acrylic primer. Welds are completely hidden, and those seams that are in the cabin and those that are outside. Inside the cabin, the lower seam as well as the entire outer seam was protected with sealant. Then an anti-corrosion compound was poured into all available holes. This is how the seams look on which I applied the primer and sealant. In those places where painting will be carried out after the repair, this is the threshold and the pillar I did not apply the sealant. Having finished with the front part of the body, we move on to the rear. It can be seen here that the bottom of the fender is strongly crumpled. There is a fold in the hatch area and a radio tape recorder is clamped inside the fender. Let's remove the tape recorder. Having made a special grip, we pull the fender out. The owner of the car asked to make the correct gaps on the door and trunk lid. Let's make gaps and change the taillight. Fender straightening is not included in my work. By changing the position of the tower of the slipway, I change the direction of the stretch. Slightly straighten the fender and give it the look we need. Since we don't have the bumper bracket nor the bumper itself in fair condition, we can't make an exact fender shape. Therefore, having installed the bumper and taillight, we check all the gaps and planes on the left side. Since this is a repair, a very budgetary owner did not want to paint, and we completely assemble the car. This is the end result. It looks like a welded donor from the doorway. The door opens and closes easily. All gaps are even as from the factory. The gaps on the muzzle turned out to be quite good considering what bad spare parts were provided to us. Friends, I remind you that we are trying to shoot interesting videos for you, and you in turn press something under the video, write comments, and do not forget to subscribe. We are starting the repair of the next car. See you soon.